Anna Kappa from the Visitor Center. This is Ranger Bethany. Hello, Ranger Ruvain.
Hello, Ranger Bethany. How are you doing today?
I am doing fabulous, Ranger Ruvain. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. It's hard to have a bad day when you're floating around off of Anacapa Island. It's really cool that you're able to talk to me today. That's part of why I'm having a good day, is that we're able to be connected together. Because even though I'm coming to you live from underwater in Channel Islands National Park, you can still see and hear me, and I can still hear you. We're connected in that way. We're also able to be connected to you because of the work done by the National Park Service, as well as the National Marine Sanctuary, to bring the Channel Islands live program to life. We also work with a lot of volunteers on our program, like our camera operator, Andrea, today. So to test that connection, Bethany, can we have our school group on the count of three give a big thank you, Andrea, into the microphone?
Absolutely. All right, we're going to say thank you. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Andrea's giving a little thank you applause back to our awesome school group today. So we can hear you and you can see and hear us, and we're remaining connected via this broadcast. What if I told you that all of us today are connected to this underwater world that we're coming to you live from? Because right now, I'm not just diving in Channel Islands National Park. We are inside of a kelp forest. Kelp forests are one of my favorite places on the planet. And the first time I dove in a kelp forest, it seemed like an alien world to me. And it's hard to picture how I might be connected to the kelp. So today, we're going to conduct an investigation and trying to determine how we all might be connected to the kelp. Starting with, what actually is a kelp forest? The Ranger Bethany, I'm curious if our audience today, when they think about a forest on land, what's the first word that comes to their mind?
All right, we have an answer here. Trees.
I heard trees. Yeah, absolutely. I know when I go hiking in the forest on land, some of my favorite places like the redwoods in Big Sur, trees are a critical part of that environment. And underwater here, kelp almost serves a similar role, like a tree might on land. In a forest on land, trees are the foundation of the ecosystem. And kelp is too, even though kelp isn't a tree or even a plant. Kelp, especially canopy forming species of kelp, are giant algae, like the giant kelp that you see all around me. Giant kelp can grow over 100 feet long, extending up towards the sky. So just like trees, they're these tall foundations of the environment here underwater. And also like trees, giant kelp takes in sunlight and carbon dioxide and produces oxygen. They photosynthesize, just like plants on land. And to do that, they utilize these blades. It's a very fancy word for a structure that's very similar to a leaf of a tree on land. The kelp, though, has to adapt to the marine environments around us. So instead of having a hard or rigid trunk, kelp has what's called a stipe, which is a flexible, bendy middle part. You can see me waving it around in front of the camera. Kelp doesn't mind one bit when I do that because it's adapted to this marine environment. Also, a little different from trees on land, kelp needs to float towards the surface to get that sunlight and be able to survive. So they have these little gas bladders. We like to call them AirPods here on the broadcast. A very fancy word for them is a pneumaticist. These AirPods help the kelp rise towards the surface where they can get the most sunlight. And just like a forest on land, our kelp needs to be connected to the ground below it. And we can take a look down toward the base of this strand of kelp. and see how the kelp remains connected to the ocean floor. Those of us who have been in a forest on land, you might be used to having a bunch of tangled, gnarled roots at the bottom of a large tree, and those roots are sucking in water. They're taking up nutrients and they're keeping the tree firmly planted to the ground. Well, here, as I move other kelp out of the way so you can see it, we have the holdfast of giant kelp. And the holdfast of kelp is similar to the roots of a tree on land. They can take up nutrients and keep the kelp fastened hard to the ocean's floor so that the kelp doesn't float away from this ecosystem. And because kelp is so good at taking in that carbon dioxide and producing oxygen and has all of these adaptations to survive out here in the ocean, we are really connected to kelp with every breath that we take. Half of the oxygen in the Earth's oceans and atmosphere is created by kelp or other algae that photosynthesize. So every time we take a breath, we have kelp and its friends to thank for half of that. I wonder, Bethany, can we test that connection? Can we take a deep breath together?
Yes, I think we would love that. All right, you ready to take a deep breath? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, I think we have some very relaxed students here.
Yeah. If you could join me in saying, thanks for the help, kelp.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Both the breath we took and our thank you to the kelp forest are only possible because of the oxygen created in our oceans. But kelp aren't just connected to us through the air that we breathe. Kelp is also connected to a huge ecosystem around it. There's over 1,000 different species of marine animals, plants, and algae that call the kelp forest home. So we're going to take a look at some of those connections today with one of our esteemed scientists here at the park. Oh, fantastic. So this is Katie, who just brought us two of the coolest animals that you'll find in the kelp forest. We have two red sea urchins here who call the kelp forest of the Channel Islands home. The urchins are really spiky little guys. See all of the spines. You don't want to accidentally have them poke you. But they're really important and native to the ecosystem here. Purple urchins and red urchins, the ones I have in my hand, like to hide in cracks and crevices and come out to munch on little pieces of kelp that float by. So they help clean up a lot of the drifting pieces of kelp on the ocean's floor. On the very bottom underside of this red urchin, they have a really interesting mouth, a fancy name called an Aristotle's lantern that helps them munch through kelp and be grazers, almost like deer in a forest on land. And in a protected area, like the one we're in today, urchins are free from the potential to be predated on. They can survive. And they can grow nice and big. So we have a smaller red urchin on my left, and the same species, a bigger one here on its right, waving its little podia, or its tube feet at me. I've been informed there may be a cameo appearance behind me at some point during this presentation. Andrea will keep an eye on the mystery animal that may be there. But urchins aren't the only species that call the kelp forest home. Let's take a look at a few other of the animals that are connected to the kelp forest around us. Yeah, very interesting. Looks like we have a sea cucumber that had gotten stuck on a piece of mast here. So a sea cucumber that we're gonna try and rescue today. There we go. Now it's free of the marine debris. A sea cucumber is also in the same family of organisms as the last spiky animals we saw. Cucumbers are echinoderms. They're in a group of animals called spiky skin, if you were to translate that from Latin. And they also like to clean up any messes they might find on the ocean floor. They'll move around, be able to decompose bits of litter, help other algae, and tidy up the ocean floor. And they have a special trick that they can do as well. When one of their native predators, unlike the non-native masked predator that we saw a second ago, tries to attack them, cucumbers can actually spit out their guts to avoid being munched on. It's a pretty cool trick. I've never tried it myself, but it works really well for them. Ranger Bethany, I wonder, do our students today have any questions about the urchins or the sea cucumber that we've shown them today?
Yes, let me go back here. I see a hand up. All right, the question is,
when the sea cucumbers spit out their guts, does it harm them?
That's a good question. So sea cucumbers can regenerate and grow their guts back. They actually do this every year or so just to clean out their internal cells, even if they're not being attacked by predators. So they have an incredible superpower where they can survive after doing that. Any other questions, Ranger Bethany?
yes, I see a few hands up here. All right, the question is,
Can you eat them?
Question was, can you eat them? So I personally don't eat the wordy sea cucumber, but there is a market for sea cucumber. There are really popular markets for the type of sea urchin we showed earlier, the red and the purple. So inside of the marine reserve we're in right now, you can't eat them. But outside of a marine reserve, where taking urchins for food is allowed, people will scoop them up and serve them. You might have heard the word udi before, a type of seafood made from the insides of a sea urchin. It's a delicacy in a lot of places. And by having these marine reserves to protect the urchins, we let them grow big. They can produce more urchins that can be harvested outside of the marine reserve. We got a couple more Kelp-connected friends that we're going to send over here now that we've rescued that sea cucumber from the marine debris that we saw it stuck in. Oh, actually, we got a third. We've done double snail shows on this program before. I think this is our first triple snail. We're going to keep going until I'm holding 15 snails at a time during some of these broadcasts. But what you see in my hand are examples of the diversity of life that we find in the kelp forests of Channel Islands National Park. We have 3 different snails who all lead different lives. The snail right here is called a kelp snail. We'll often see them affixed to different blades in the kelp, using the kelp as food. The turban snail, the wavy turban snail, right next to it here, you can see the underside of it, and the little cover or operculum it uses to hide from predators, is also a grazer, eating algae and other material. But the one sneaky snail to my right, this guy, the Kellet's whelk, is a dangerous snail if you're one of the other twos. Kellet's whelk like to eat other snails. They're actually predators. they're native to the ecosystem too. They're connected to the kelp because it gives snails and other invertebrates a home that the kelp's will, while I juggle these snails, is able to prey on. They've got a really long tongue-like appendage that they can stick out in the proboscis and drill into other snails. So to avoid terrifying the other two snails, I'm going to pass them back to my friend Katie, so that they can go back and be placed in the ecosystem where they came from. Ranger Bethany, do we have any snail mail? Any questions about the snails that we saw today?
Yes, we have some hands up. All right, the question is,
Are they harmful to the ecosystem?
Oh, that was a really interesting question. Are we harmful to the ecosystem? Humans have the potential to change the environment around them, and our actions definitely impact the ecosystem. We all have the choice. We can be responsible stewards of our ocean. We can help protect the kelp, but we also have the ability to harm kelp forest ecosystems, which is why it's all really important that places like Channel Islands National Park are protected. Because for over 40 years, we've been monitoring the kelp forests of Channel Islands National Park. We come back to the same sites to see how well the kelp is doing and the animals that depend on it. And we saw declines in a number of really key species for the ecosystem a few decades ago. And so humans took collective action to help the kelp and establish marine reserves across wide parts of our park, like the one we're in today at Anacapa Landing Cove. And because of the creation of these places where the animals can grow plentiful and large, we were able to help the kelp forest after our impacts of overfishing animals like the sea cucumber and predators put the kelp forest in jeopardy. So we can harm the kelp, but we can also help the kelp together. Ranger Bethany, do we have any other snail-related questions or questions about the ocean at large before I show you one more surprise animal at the end?
yes, we have a few more questions. The question is,
Can snails eat some seaweed?
Yeah, lots of different kinds of snails like to graze on seaweed. The kelp that you see around me isn't just the home of the snail, it's also their food. Like if your house was made out of gingerbread and you were able to munch on it every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So our snail community here gets twofold. It's a great real estate investment to live in a kelp forest. You get free food for the rest of your life too. Another animal that likes to munch on the kelp forest around us and also calls it home is one that volunteer Andrew is going to pan to. We're going to go on a little adventure underwater and take a look at one of the coolest animals here in the kelp forest. I'm actually going to join her too. While we're heading there, Bethany, do we have any other questions from the audience?
yes, let me see. We have some hands up. All right, the question is,
How much trash do you guys find every single time that you guys go to the floor?
How much trash do we find out here? It really changes a lot day to day. Oftentimes, the trash left behind by humans on the mainland makes its way to the ocean. We call that marine debris when we find it out here. And marine debris takes many forms. Some marine debris can be trash from landfills on land. Sometimes we lose stuff underwater, like that pair of goggles we saw. And we see how that can impact the ecosystem around us. We actually saw the little sea cucumber that was caught up in it. And here we are, we've arrived at one of my favorite animals in the kelp forest ecosystem. What we're seeing here is a species that has been connected to humans and to the kelp forest time immemorial. This animal right here is another snail. Surprise, we've got a fourth snail on the broadcast. This is a species called a pink abalone. Abalone are one of the coolest snails that we'll find here. Don't tell the other snails I said that. But they like to affix themselves to rocks, and they'll munch on little bits of kelp that drift by. Abalone are really important, both because of their role in the ecosystem, but also because of their connection to humans. The Chumash have been connected to abalone since time immemorial, and the Chumash are the traditional caretakers and the stewards of Channel Islands National Park. This is their home, and abalone are a big part of their home. And their role of eating drift kelp is really important as grazers in the ecosystem. I just fed this pink abalone a little bit of kelp, and it's already latched onto it and is munching away. If we came back in a couple of minutes, that drift kelp that we fed to the abalone would just be gone. Abalone have had a huge cultural connection to what is now Channel Islands National Park for millennia and continue to this day. And abalone are another one of those species that are connected to the kelp forest. They need healthy kelp in order to survive. Here in Channel Islands National Park and our marine reserves, especially off of this island called Anacapa, and the next island over called Santa Cruz or Limu, the abalone are bigger and more abundant inside of the reserves where we protect the kelp and the species that help keep the kelp healthy. Abalone and people are the better for it. And thanks to over 40 years of monitoring by Channel Islands National Park, we can help make better decisions about where we need to protect to ensure that the species are healthy and that more of them are available to fish elsewhere. Because we're connected to the kelp forest around us. We heard that question earlier of, do humans harm the kelp? Some of our actions can impact the kelp in a negative way, but we have the opportunity to be good stewards, to understand how we're connected to the kelp forest, and make sure that we're leaving a happier and safer kelp forest for the next generation, for when your kids are watching this broadcast. Ranger Bethany, do we have any other questions from our audience about any of the animals that we've seen today?
Yes, we have some questions. All right. The question is
there any sharks there?
I've been waiting for someone to ask that question. This is the 8th live dive we've done this spring, and that's the first time we've got a shark question. That's exciting. Yes, there's lots of sharks here. I'm hoping I get to see one later today. The sharks that we often see in the kelp forest are about that big. We have horn sharks with little horns on the top of them. We have swell sharks that pump themselves up when predators approach. And even some of the largest sharks in the world, like basking sharks, are known to swim through Channel Islands National Park. Unfortunately, they don't give us their schedules ahead of time. So we can't find them for the live dive. They have to find us. Any other questions, Ranger Bethany?
yes. The question is
there a lot of turtles?
The question was, are there a lot of turtles? There's a few turtles that pass through Channel Islands National Park. We're a little farther north than places like San Diego, which see more sea turtles than us. But green sea turtles, olive ridley sea turtles, a couple of different species can occasionally be sighted in the park. It's a very exciting moment when they are, too, because they only pass through occasionally. The Channel Islands are a bit of a transition zone We've got cold water currents coming down from the north and warm water currents closer to the coast coming up. So we see more sea turtles, the southern islands, because the temperature and other water properties are very different, even within one national park. Ranger Bethany, do we have any other questions from our audience?
Yes, we have another question.
Are sea snails edible?
Question was, are sea snails edible? And the answer is yes. Humans have been eating them for thousands of years. Abalone were once taken commercially in California. There was a fishery. People would pop them off of the rocks and eat them in all kinds of different ways. Even the turban snail that we saw earlier is edible. I think we got time for one last question, Ranger Bethany, before we send off.
Excellent. We have one last question here.
Do you guys have sea lions?
Yes, we do have sea lions. I haven't seen any today, but my back has been to the ocean for most of today. So if you saw one fly by me during this broadcast, you'll have seen one more sea lion than I have so far. But there are over 200,000 California sea lions found in the Southern California Bight, or this area of Southern California, from Point Conception down to the border with Mexico. And sea lions are here in so many numbers because the kelp forests and other marine environments produce great habitat for fish to survive, for the sea lions to eat. Even the sea lions are connected to the kelp. Thank you very much, Ranger Bethany, and to our audience for joining us today. It's been really fun exploring all the different ways that we are connected to each other.
Thank you, Ranger Ruvain, and everyone out at Anacapa Island. Can we say thank you?
Thank you very much, and best fishes to all of you.